Hi guys, Mika here with a go through Brimstone review on buying. The review will focus mainly on game sense, positioning, and ability usage. Let's get into it. A few general tips before we begin. First, we always look at what abilities the opponents will have and how this factors into how we respond to them later on in the match. So we're defending first, and the abilities that we should pay particularly close attention to are the 4 flashes from Phoenix and Reyna, Sage Wall, which can be used as a very common tactic to block off any defenders on A side, and Brimstone and Killjoy mollies, as well as Brimstone's ultimate, which all can be used to delay the defuse. So if you're ever stuck in a position where the spike is down and Killjoy is still alive, we always want to try and look for Killjoy mollies before we attempt to start the defuse. The second tip is that we always look at the opponent's economy as well as the opponent's ultimate availability before the round starts, so that we know whether Sage has a resurrect up or whether or not the opponent team is going to be echoing the round and we can push a little harder. Alright, so now we're heading into round 1 and the opponent team has pushed up really quickly and has also smoked off our vision. So in response, we try to use the molly, which is a pretty good idea to delay the push and allow our teammates time to rotate. Problem is that the opponent's Phoenix pushed really quickly, so maybe the molly could have been deployed sooner. Okay, so now we're heading into round 2. In Go, I find it quite typical for a team to repeat the exact same strategy that they used in the previous round, if the strategy was successful, and especially if they know that the opponent is going to be echoing that round, which is what you guys are doing this round. So you should be expecting an A push this round following the exact same strategy as the round before. Okay. So the round plays out and we see that a Jet dies to the Killjoy who pushed heavily. And alright, I want you to stop here for a moment and think back to what happened the previous round, because there are a lot of similarities between the previous round and this round, which will help you later on, alright? So we realized that in the previous round, the Brim used his smokes to block off vision, and he also used his molly to try and prevent anybody from the defending team to push U-Haul, and he died to the Phoenix through U-Haul when the Phoenix pushed U-Haul in the previous round. And so this is exactly what you should be expecting when you turn the corner and pick, right? You should be expecting that the Phoenix will repeat the exact same thing that he did in the previous round, and that the Phoenix will be picking U-Haul again. Alright, so let's see what happens.
Okay, and so you pick, and sure enough the Phoenix is right there, and it was a really good hit shot, right, on the Phoenix, but he just had a better gun and you were 1 HP, and so you end up dying. No fault of your own there. So now we head into round 3, and before this round there really isn't anything that we can do to sort of predict which side the opponents will be playing at, because it's the first full buy round for both of your teams, okay? So the round plays out and we see that your Jet died to the push and Killjoy, and you managed to get a trade on that, which was really good. You always want to try and trade your teammates whenever they die, okay? And the round plays out and now you are looking at showers, okay? Let's take a step back and think what happened the previous 2 rounds and how it can help us in this round. So in the previous 2 rounds, the Brimstone smoked off the side and the Sage used a wall to block off the defenders on A side so that she could plant the spike properly, right? And I'm pretty sure, even though I can't really see the wall, that this is the exact scenario that is going to happen right now. They repeated the same strategy for the past 2 rounds and they're doing the same thing again on the 3rd round, okay? So I would advise you in this case to actually use your molly to sort of delay the spike plant and see how they react when you use your molly. You see the Reyna, you kill the Reyna, that's great, and the Sage kills you, okay? So in picking the Sage, your crosshair placement could have been better, aligned to the head level, and tracking the corner of the Sage wall so that you don't have to flick as much when you actually see the siege. Alright? And so now we move on to round 4. And I would argue that it's very likely for the opponent team to push onto B side this time around. If you think about it from the opponent's perspective, they just repeated the same strategy for the past 3 rounds and it won them 2 rounds, but on the most recent round they actually lost that round. So if you were the opponent, you would think that it would be high time for you to change up the strategy and push onto a different side this time around. Alright, so the round starts and you see 3 of the opponents through hookah, which means that 2 of them might be going through B long. And at this 1 minute mark, I think that you should have sent 2 of your team members back to A side. And the reason for that is because the enemy team didn't really commit much towards the B push. They used 1 flash, and I think that was it. They just used 1 Reyna flash. And additionally, they also got a pick from that, and they more or less guaranteed the entire team has rotated towards B side, which leaves A side wide open for the taking. Another thing that you have to learn is what signals the enemy's commitment towards the push. And in this case, in the past 3 rounds, every time the enemy committed, the most common ability that was used was the Brimstone smokes. So in this case, you don't see the Brimstone smokes, and that's another signal for you that you should try to rotate back towards A side, because the opponents might have very well rotated back to side. Alright, so you're heading up to heaven, and sure enough, you see Brimstone smokes smoking off heaven. So that just further lends credence to the theory that if the opponent Brimstone smokes, that means there's a very high possibility that the opponent team is going to commit straight onto the side. Okay? Positioning here is really, really bad because of how many angles you expose yourself to. The better option would be to drop down onto side, because the Killjoy's lockdown has already been activated, and using the green boxes as a form of cover and slowly clear angles one by one. And so because of how exposed you are, it's really, really easy for the opponent team's Killjoy to just swing and get a kill on you, and you guys lose the round. Alright, so just really, really good play from you here. Remember that the Brimstone signals commitment from the enemy team, and so you use your ultimate, very good use right there, to separate off the Killjoy from the rest of the team, isolate her, and you get a pick on her. This also serves an additional function of delaying the push by the enemy, and you follow it up by getting 2 more kills, 3 more, and the Phoenix is in showers. Brilliant, you got the ace. Great job right there. Really good use of your ultimate again. And now we're moving on to round 6. For round 6, I think that you should actually go to B side, and the reason for that is because after an opponent team gets aced at a side, it's really, really unlikely that you see them push the same side again, because they don't want to repeat or whatever just happened to them. You know what I mean? Again, you see Brimsmokes. Brimsmokes at this point of time should become common knowledge for you that it is a hard commitment on towards the side. And so eventually you end up in a 1v1 with the opponent Brimstone. Right, the opponent Brimstone has his ultimate up, so if it gets the spike down, you have to tap the defuse really, really quickly to bait out his ultimate as soon as possible. Okay, so he uses his ultimate here, and you're just peeking the different corners. Alright, he went to A, so you're rotating all the way back towards A side. And so eventually, after rotating back to A, you're now rotating back to B, and you end up in a 1v1 with the opponent Brimstone. So over here, it's just really good picking, slowly clearing the angles, and the last pick was really, really good because you use picker's advantage to your own benefit, because you were taking a wider angle than the opponent Brimstone possibly could, which allows you to view the opponent Brimstone before he can see you. This allows you to clutch it around, and you guys win. Great job. So now we start round 7, and this is just really bad positioning on your team, because first of all, nobody's looking at showers, right? And second of all, you are crossing a shot with your knife out, which should never happen, because think back to round 2, I think, round 2, or was it round 3, where your Jet was peeking a shot and she died towards the Killjoy who had aggressively pushed a shot. So if that happened this round and you have your knife out, it was basically just a free kill on you, because there was nothing you could do. You couldn't shoot back because you didn't have your gun out, you know what I mean? So that's just really bad positioning and really bad movement as well on this round, and you end up dying. Okay, and now is round 8, and just as the round starts, you immediately lose 2 members towards the pushing Killjoy. And this is just reinforcing what I said the previous round. Really likely that the Killjoy is going to push a shot, and if you had your knife out again, like what you did the previous round, you would have just died too as well, putting your team in a 2v5 disadvantage. Okay? And while you're rotating back to B side, I just want you to note that the Sage has her ultimate up, which could very well be used for a revive, and there we go, there's a revive on the Brimstone. As a Brimstone yourself, and because you have your ultimate up, you could have potentially used your ultimate there to get a 2k on both the Sage and the Brimstone. So that's just something to keep in mind in future rounds. And so now you're pushing elbow, Brimstone has smoked it off again, and the round plays out. You get a frag on the brim, which is just huge. You push onto side, clearing the angle slowly. I think that you should use your ultimate and your molly here to prevent pushes from certain sides like A long and hookah. But at the end of the day, you managed to clutch it around, so that's just good play on your part, good aim, and good that you kept your cool in such a stressful environment. And round 9 starts, and you're back at A side. In the future, I'm going to switch up between A side and B side to keep the opponent guessing which side you're going to be at. Okay? And use your ultimate here again, just sort of delay the push, which is great. Your team also managed to get 2 picks on the opponent team, making it a 3v5, which is just really good. Normally I would say that the team would rotate to B, but I just saw the Brim commit using his smokes, which means, yeah, there was somebody in showers, which is an area that your team did not cover. So your positioning as a team must always be on point as well. You must make sure that you keep all your angles covered so that no opponent can actually flank you, you know what I mean? Okay, and so round 10 starts, and you pick, and you get info that the opponent team is coming. You use a molly to stall, although I would be very careful here, because this is essentially how you died in round 1, when the Phoenix aggressively pushed you through U-Haul. Okay, so far gets 2 kills on the opponent team, which is just absolutely huge. Alright, and your Jet gets another one, which is just makes the round just clean up from here. Okay, and sure enough, your team cleans up the game, and you guys get the round. It's round 11, and before we start, I just want you to think back a few rounds and understand what the opponent has done and how the opponent might react from this. So in the past 3 rounds, the opponent team just lost because they pushed A shot first, which means that it's rather likely that this time, after losing 3 rounds trying to go A, they will push B in this round instead. Okay? And they do happen to push B side this round, but that's not to say an A push was impossible, it was just less likely. So if they decided to push A again this round, it just makes them pushing B the next round even likelier. And there really isn't any pattern or anything that you can be looking out for in this kind of thing. It's just more of an intuition and putting yourself in your enemy's shoes. For example, if you were on attack and you just lost 3 rounds pushing A shot, you would probably think that this would be a good time to start pushing onto B side instead. And so you rotate onto B side, and honestly the first warning sign that I have for you here is that there's no Brimstone smokes. And when there's no Brimstone smokes, it means that there likely isn't any commitment from the opponent team to push on to B side. Your team has an Omen left on A side, and I will encourage you to rotate back to A right now because they could be going A side instead. And this is the exact same thing that you've seen in the previous rounds, right? Using Sage Wall to cut off SS on A side so that she can get the spike down safely. And you managed to get the Q on the Brimstone. You guys go on to side, and there was just really efficient trading there from you and your teammates, and you guys managed to get the round win. Now it is the last round before the swap, and there really isn't much info to determine which side the enemy is going. You just know that if it's an A side, it will typically be an A side rush, Sage Wall, and Brimsmokes, which is the same strategy they have been repeating the past few rounds. So the round plays out, and you see Brimsmokes, which is the first half commitment. Your Jet gets a frag onto the enemy team's Reyna, which is huge, right? And chances are the Sage is walling right now and planting the spike. It's probably going to happen quite soon. The Raze dies in showers, so you go for the pick, get a kill on the Killjoy, that was huge, and the Sage Wall is right there. Okay, that was really unlucky, ran out of bullets. Get a kill onto the Sage, and you get traded by the Reyna. Alright, there could have been some improvement there because you had your ultimate up, and you had your molly, and you had vision on the Sage as well. So you could very well have just altered the Sage to stop the defuse and use your molly to buy more time by preventing the opponents from getting towards the spike, okay? So there's just some areas of improvement that you could have done, especially because you had your ultimate up. Okay, so we have finished defense, and before we go on to attack, let's just take a quick review of whatever we have learned so far. Alright, so the main takeaways is number one, you should always try to identify your opponent's habits. In this case, this particular opponent team, they really like to use Brimstone smokes as a sign of commitment, and they like to push A shot so that Sage can get a wall up and they can get a safe plant. After they plant, they typically play very passive post-plant positions and don't push, and instead wait for your team to push onto them. Alright, so the examples that I gave is specific to this particular opponent team, but the concepts are things that apply to every single Valorant ranked match you play. Every opponent team will have certain habits, certain patterns that they repeat time and time again, and the sooner you are able to identify these patterns, these habits, the sooner you are able to use them against your opponent for your own advantage, right? An example of this is that if you're playing Brimstone and you have your ultimate up and the opponent team committed because you saw their smokes and you saw Sage will go up, you will be able to use your ultimate to get a free kill on the Sage because you know for a fact that she is going to be planting right there. Okay, so this is just an example. So generally, right, once you identify these patterns that the opponent team has, you'll be able to use them to your advantage by perhaps getting better positioning before the round even starts. And it's just the fact that you will be expecting the enemy, but the enemy will not be expecting you, which just tilts the entire fight in your favor. Alright, so now it's your team's turn on attack, and you see the Sage Wall right there, and you also see the Brimsmokes, so you know that at least 2 people are on site right now. Okay, so push forward, you see Brim's molly as well. Okay, and this is not something that you should be doing because your Omen smoke is not hard cover. Whenever you do not have your gun out, you always want to be behind hard cover and not something like smoke, which will disappear at any time. Right, so now you try and go on the flank for the Brimstone, I think. Right, okay, and you get the kill there. And now it's a 1v2 and you die to the Reyna. Okay. I think that round was okay, but you could have played better by flanking on the Brimstone faster. I think you were worried that the Brimstone might be looking at you through that particular angle when you came up from the smoke. But once you heard the Brimstone start shooting your teammates, you should have just ran out of the smoke and flanked the Brimstone to get the kill. Okay? So round 14 is an equal round. You guys didn't really expect it to win, so let's just see what happens. although it's an eco round and you guys are unexpected to win, you should still aim to trade effectively. So in eco rounds, moving as pairs or in groups of 3 will allow you to get trades on opponents that have better weapons than you. Alright, so there's one flaw that I see here. And at the end of the day, even though you guys lost the round, you still get some information from it, right? You know that the Brimstone and the Sage will always play on A side, and that the Sage walls to prevent people from pushing her, which means that there will be 3 people of the opponent team on B side, which is the Vayner, the Killjoy, and the Phoenix. Okay, so I want you to keep this in mind. Even though you lose a round, you can still gain information from it, which will help you to win future rounds. Okay. Alright, so let's just jump right into round 15, and your team pushes A again. You go on the flank through showers, which is a really good idea because I don't think the opponent team will be expecting you to come from here. Okay, and the opponent gets a pick on the Brimstone, which is huge. You know that there's a Sage on site somewhere, and okay, she's revealed. You get the kill on her because of the good flank, right? There's a really good flank right there. Good use of your smokes as well to store the push to store the retake even further. And now it's just a 2v5, right? Okay, at this point, I would actually prefer for you to play more passive and try to effectively trade with your team. But heck, you're on fire this match, so why not just go and kill the Phoenix as well? And you get that. Alright, so now let's move on to round 16. Brimstone smokes, and you die through the smoke, so that's just plain unlucky. Nothing much to say. Alright, and now we are going on to round 17, and you're using your ultimate as the round. Okay, I would not advise using your ultimate so early in the round without getting at least some sort of confirmation that somebody is there, because using your ultimate is a really big investment. It's 7 ultimate points, and typically you either want to use it to either A, store a defuse, or B, get a kill if you know for certain that an enemy is in that position, which you currently do not. You do not have any idea whether anybody is within you or not, and so I can't really recommend that ultimate. Alright, so before we go on to the next round, I want to focus on some things that I noticed in this round, and that's basically ultimate usage, not only on your end, but on the opponent team's end, okay? So when you use an ultimate, it typically signals that your team is committing towards the side, and the enemy Brimstone used his ultimate in response to yours, and this shows that the enemy team has bought into your team's push onto A side, and that the opponent team will be rotating towards A side to 5-stack A side. So a possible thing that you could have done is that you could have actually used the ultimate by yourself and let the rest of your team go onto B side, because remember, an ultimate is a huge investment, and it typically means that your team will be pushing onto A side, so you could use that as a distraction of sorts. Okay, so now it's round 18. Really nice one tap on the Phoenix right there. Good crosshair placement. So you get a gun, and I'll recommend you guys to push B right now because you know where other opponent team members on B, which is the Killjoy, who is probably on site, and Vayner, who is on site or B long. Instead, you guys go to A side, which I don't really recommend because you guys just lost 3 out of the past 4 rounds when you pushed A side, okay? Regardless, you guys go there, and it's an eco round, so okay, you die to the Brimstone. So there's really bad positioning because first of all, you weren't covered. I'm not too sure whether or not there was communication error between you and your Sova, and your Sova told you that he was actually watching side. But either way, that death could have been prevented if you actually focus your crosshair on areas that you are not covered by your smokes. Okay, and you guys are finally committing towards the B push. So you can expect Phoenix in hookah, you can expect Vayner B long, and you can expect Killjoy on side because that's where they were all at in the previous rounds, and you shouldn't really expect any deviation from that, okay? So you see Brimstone smokes, which means that Brimstone and Sage has probably rotated over already, and so now it's a 4v4 on B side, okay? And you get picked off. Typically, you do not want to jump out of hookah so unprotected like that. It would have been better if one of your teammates was pushing elbow at the same time, so you didn't have to clear the angle as well, and you could instead just focus on any of the defenders on site instead. And at this point in time, I also want to bring up the idea of habits and patterns that we learned in defender's side, and how these concepts actually apply when you're attacking as well. So you know for a fact that Brimstone and Sage will be on B side, and that Phoenix will be in hookah, Reyna will be B long, and Killjoy will be somewhere on site. So a really good way that you guys could attack is by sending 3 to hookah and 2 to B long to effectively trade out the Phoenix and the Reyna before swarming onto site, because you know that they will probably be at these positions, okay? So now we hop into round 20. You guys are playing slower this time around. See the Brimstone on A side again. And I don't think there's a particular plan you guys are doing. Okay, we see Reyna's flash on hookah. This means that hookah is actually free. The Phoenix probably isn't at hookah, because, although the Reyna might be there, because you don't flash an area that your team currently is control over, you know what I mean? So you can pretty much push hookah a little bit faster as well. Really unlikely that anybody will be there. You guys get to site, Killjoy's target is there again. Reyna's on site B side as well. Okay. Phoenix is also somewhere on B side, you see his ability, and you get killed by the Killjoy. So main takeaways from this round is that understanding that when an enemy uses an ability, you can get information from there as well. So a flash means that the area that was flashed probably does not contain an enemy. Smokes means that the opponent team is buying time for the entire team to rotate onto site, and things like that. So ability usage by an opponent will always give you information as well. Okay, we hop into round 21 right now, and you're pushing B hookah, so you know to expect the Phoenix at hookah, B hookah, right? It's always been there probably. Oh, and there is his good kill on him, good flick. Alright, and the Killjoy has all utilities set up here as well. Okay, so now you're rotating back to your team, back on A side. Half of them are on the inside, while you and your Raze with the spike are on B side. Okay, so I guess this is a split up push. You're trying to out the Killjoy on side. Good idea, although I again would prefer that you get information that the Killjoy is actually there before you commit ultimate, right? And okay, just now when you pushed onto side, you always should wait for your smokes to actually drop before you push, because if an opponent was holding the angle, was holding hookah angle, he could easily get a kill on you, because you won't be expecting the enemy to still peek, and he will still have vision before the smoke actually dropped. Really unfortunate that you got a headshot on the Killjoy, but it was through a wall, so you didn't actually manage to one-tap her. That was just unfortunate. Okay, now we are moving on to round 22, and you're pushing B long. So the expectation here again would be that Reyna is somewhere in B long, while the Phoenix will be somewhere in B hookah, and Killjoy is somewhere on B side. Okay, so you pick, and Reyna is there, and the Killjoy trades for the Reyna. There really wasn't much that you could have done, apart from flicking faster and getting the kill on the Killjoy as well. Now we're here into round 23. Generally, I would always advise you to be in position before the round starts, and I will also heavily advise you to take advantage of what you already know, which is that the Phoenix will be at B hookah, the Reyna will be at B long, Killjoy will be at B side. Sure enough, your Raze dies to the Reyna pushing up B long. Earlier in the round, the Phoenix actually used this ultimate to push up B hookah as well. Okay, so the expectation now is going to be that Sage and Brimstone will be on A side, possibly with another defender, rotating over from B towards A. Wait for the wall to break, slowly pick the angles. Alright, you're looking at Haven, you're clearing all the angles. Looking at Haven again, and your own smokes out Haven, and you are using your own smokes to block off vision from some angles. Your own pushes onto side. Remember that Sage and Brim are on side somewhere, and you die to the Sage who was hiding in the corner. Alright, so that concludes today's VOD. I would say that you have pretty good aim for your rank. However, you need to learn how to recognize these patterns from your opponents and use those patterns to get easier round reads, right? So an attack, for example, you could just send 3 through hookah and 2 long, or vice versa. And because you know that the Reyna and the Phoenix will be at those positions and you can get easy frags on them, because you will be expecting them, but they will not be expecting you, right? On defense, you could perhaps move yourself to different sides because you are the top frag and you're more likely to better hold the side than your teammates. You could also use these expectations of what the opponent is going to do against them, like what I said in the previous short review, where you could use your molly to deny the Sage plant after she was, right? Other things that you can take away is ultimate usage. So using your ultimate only when you can confirm a kill is important, or using it to stall a defuse and getting a free round win. And finally, understanding that you can always learn something from anything that happens, right? You can learn something even when you're dead. You can learn something when an opponent uses an ability. For example, we went through that just now. When Reyna used the flash to clear B hookah, this means that probably none of her teammates are in hookah because there's no reason to flash an area where your teammate has control over, right? So I believe that if you improve your game sense, positioning and ability usage, you can definitely climb to a higher rank because your aim is definitely really on point. Okay, so that's it for today. This is Maker, and if you learned something from the review, please leave a like and subscribe. If you want me to review your VOD, you can send me an email at makervalorant42@gmail.com, or you can find me on Discord or Reddit. More in the description below. Hope you enjoyed this video and see you soon.